So continuing from where we left off with our last video, we created a whole skeletal system for our character. We assigned all the joints to them. We renamed everything and created one side and the other side. So now we're going to start working with pretty much creating different type of controls for our character. This way it's going to make things easier for us to work with. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to select my character. I'm going to add him to a new layer and change the visibility just for now. So what we're going to create is what's called an IK handle. So what an IK handle does is it pretty much is a shortcut of animating our character. So like I said in the other videos, rigs are rotational, not translational, which means you're never really going to move these joints around. You're always going to rotate them along those pivot points. Because if you move your actual arm or leg or any part of your body, you're actually rotating your joints and the bones are moving with it. Because of that, it makes things very tedious to work with when it comes to animating certain parts of the body. So for example, like legs, if I want to have my knee bend, if I'm raising my leg, I'm going to have to rotate this, then the knee, then the ankle, and all that. So we create what's called IK handles in order to allow us to kind of have a little bit of a shortcut. So usually you'll almost always put them in legs. Some people like to put them in arms as well because it makes things a lot easier to move arms. But I'm going to show you how to do it on legs for now. So the first thing we need to do is we have to make this mesh a little bit imperfect when it comes to the rig. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the side view, and near these knee joints, I'm actually going to move them forward a little bit, and I'm going to move my ankles back to where they're supposed to be. And the reason I'm doing this is because we want to have a little bit of differentiation with the legs in order to get the IK handles to work. So what we're going to do is we're now going to be prepped to create an IK handle. So what it basically will do is add essentially a muscle system in our leg that will allow us to easily move the leg around without having to rotate a bunch of different things. It basically allows us to add a little translational properties to our leg. So to add IK handle, we go to skeleton, create IK handle. We start through the option box just because we want to make sure we have rotate plane solver selected. And we always start at the top and then move our way to the ankle. And what that does is it'll turn our leg, let me change the visibility off. So we see our leg part of the rig now turned brown. We have a white arrow sticking out this way, which is showing forward. And we have, if you look closely, this kind of green triangle in there. And what that triangle does is if I use the translation tool to move it up, it'll actually bend my leg. So normally I would have to rotate this part of my hip, rotate this part of the knee, and this part of the ankle just to move it around. But with an IK handle, we essentially have that attachment to it. And we can use the translation tool or the move tool to kind of get it into place. Which sounds silly, but it makes animating a lot easier. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other leg. Let me just rename this. So I'm just going to name this L_IK handle. I'm going to go create a new one. I don't have to go through the option box. I just want to do it for that setting. That looks good. And there it is. So now I have two IK handles set up. So if I move this one, everything works out really nicely. The reason I move these knees forward before is otherwise they would probably end up breaking the leg in our rigged character. So now that we have IK handles done, we could create ones for our arms if we really wanted to. But for this tutorial, we're not going to do that. You're just going to try to keep it as nice and simple as possible. So let me minimize all this. So at this point, a good portion of our rig is done. But the rig doesn't really have any controls to it. We don't really want to work with the joints themselves because it's not the proper way of animating a character. You don't want to have to touch the joints at all. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to go modify freeze my transformations just to be safe on everything. And now we're going to be ready to rig our character, or create controls for our character. What I'm doing right now is just freezing transformations just to make things a little bit better. So let us create some controls. What you're going to do is essentially make controls for the main parts of the body. So we'll have a control for almost every joint. The only controls we don't really need joints that we don't need controls for are the knees, because we have the IK handle working with them. And we don't really need one for the toes either. So what we're going to do is we'll start with the root joint and just kind of make controls as we go along. So to create a control, we just go to create NURB primitives and we create a circle. Just a very simple circle. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, let me hold V, and I'm going to snap it to my joint. I'm going to turn off my character model for now, just so it's easier for me to select things and move things around. And I'm just going to scale this up. And you might like kind of turn them on and off as you're going along. It really doesn't matter. It just, as long as you can see the control outside your character. After this, I'm going to create a duplicate of it. I'm going to go move this one into place. Go again, turn this off to make this a little easier. And ignore my lettering come up here. It's just easier for you to see any keyboard commands I'm inputting. So if you see a letter pop up a lot of times, I'm just holding the button down. So I'm going to create another one. Let me grab it, bring it over there. So all I'm doing is snapping it to the vertex, which will put it into the center of the joint. And I'm going to resize all of these later on. Just for now, it's just easier to see where I'm putting them. So I'll put that. And all I'm doing is hitting Command D to duplicate the control. That way I have it all set up. I'm not going to put a control at the top of the head because it's not really necessary. So we've got those set up. I'm going to take this one, I'm going to rotate this about 90 degrees. And I'm going to move it over to this one. And I'm pretty much just adding it to each control. So there we go. There we go. And I'm not going to put a control on the fingertip either, because it's not necessary. Alright. I'm going to do the same over here. So I'm just doing that. It might seem daunting at first, but as you kind of understand it more, it gets easier. So this one's going over here. The next one is going to go to the ankle, just like that. And I'll put another one on that ankle. This one I'm going to put another one there. And that's pretty much all the controls we're going to need for now. And it might look a little bit crazy at first, but once we kind of size it up, it becomes a lot more manageable. So I'm going to put my characters back on. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scale these down quite a bit, just so it's a little more manageable. So I'm going to go bring this down to, just for size purposes, I'm just going to scale to 1. Normally you'd probably do one side first and then just duplicate them over the other side so you don't have to scale these on your own. But I didn't think of that till just now. So let me see, can I do duplicate ones at once? Will it scale nicely? Yeah, that works. Alright, so I'm just scaling them down, the ones on the arms down, all at once. Just making it a little easier to see. I might even do the same with a bunch of these. So I'm just going to change these down to 1. I might scale the... Oh, let me turn this off real quick. I might scale this one up a bit, just to make it easier to see. That's good. My root joint control I'm going to have go like that. These I'm going to switch to about 1. That looks good. And same for these. Now what I'm actually going to do is I'm not going to have these put on the ankle. I just want them in that area for now. I'm going to change these a little bit. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to start with one of them and I'm going to scale it down like this. And I'm actually going to put it to the bottom of my character's foot. The reason I'm doing that is it's going to be easier to kind of differentiate the control of the ankle over the foot. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a duplicate of this one again, bring that over here. And some people do get really fancy with their controls for it. It's really up to you and how detailed you want to get. Oops. Oh, I hit both selected. So I'm just going to put it like that. So now what we have is a bunch of these circles. And we're going to go in and name all of them. So what I'm going to do is pretty much the same process as before. I'm going to name them the exact same way as I did for my joints. That way I know exactly what they're going to. So seems that my casting tool is not going. There we go. So I could have mirrored these as well, done the whole naming convention as well, but for now we're just going to do it manually. So this I'm just going to do oops, messed that one up. And it might seem like a very tedious thing to do, and you might not think it's necessary, but it is pretty helpful when you start working with your rig and working with different parts of it. So for a little bit of tedious work, it is a lot of frustration saved. So now that I have everything named, in the next video we're going to go over parent constraints and creating a couple more controls. So see you then.